I'd like to tell you about an experiment we entered into about 2 years ago with the Canadian Council of Churches. We had to reaffirm our involvement with the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada because we had not been able, through time and energy and money, to be able to attend and be involved, and I have recommitted us to that particular group. What I've also done is I've asked that a group called Canadian Council of Churches, who falsely advertised that they spoke for most Christians in this country, 85% they said, which amused me and annoyed me, that they would not go around being able to declare that. Now, what we discovered and had a problem with is about 20 years ago when we joined the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada, we did not choose to move out of Canadian Council of Churches. What we did is we said we don't have money to do both. Now, we don't have a lot of money now, but the fact is, if we're not at the table with Canadian Council of Churches, we are excluded from a variety of things, including Canadian Baptist Ministry works with the Interfaith Committee on Military Chaplaincy. We represent Baptists in this country on that committee. It is a committee sponsored by Canadian Council of Churches. I am the rep on that. I attend those meetings, and I also lead and help facilitate our Baptist Military Chaplains in retreat every year. It's coming up in June. So what we did is we suggested 2 years ago that we would be observers on Canadian Council of Churches, not full members, and we have done that and experienced a good experience. What we've also insisted is that Bruce Clemenger, head of Evangelical Fellowship of Canada, the chair of the board of Canadian Council of Churches, and their general secretary, who is Karen Hamilton, would meet together with the denominations that are part of Canadian Council of Churches and Evangelical Fellowship of Canada. And those churches are Canadian Baptists of Western Canada, Canadian Baptists of Ontario, Quebec, Reformed Church in America, Christian Reformed Church, the Salvation Army, and the Presbyterian Church in Canada. And soon the Atlantic Baptist. So we've got a real mixed bag. There are two groups that are particularly liberal theologically and practically within the Canadian Council of Churches. One has been fairly strident in that, the United Church, the Anglican Church a little less so. We've been able to say things to them like, in your stand on same-sex marriage in the United Church, you have engaged in identity theft with other Christians in Canada. And you've also based your advertising on being negative with Christians that are more conservative or different from yourself. And we like to talk about that. We don't believe that's proper or adequate. So we have really good discussions about those kinds of things. We've been able to challenge the fact that in the Canadian Council of Churches, they had pejoratively lumped together Salvation Army, the Mennonites, the Baptists, and the Quakers, of all people, and entitled them the Anabaptist and Radical Reformation. And I pointed out to them that both the Quakers and the Salvation Army didn't baptize, so they couldn't anabaptize anybody. And number two, the word Radical Reformation was historically, and even in present days, used pejoratively by many of the denominations around the Canadian Council of Churches table to persecute churches in this vein. And we wished from now on to be called Free Church, so we have renamed ourselves in that context. So those are some bits and pieces as we have moved on, just to give you a snapshot of that. We have found that the presence of the Catholics and the Orthodox have really cemented our orthodoxy. There's lots of bells and whistles and extra things I wouldn't buy into. We don't buy into as Baptists. But I would not be comfortable about reinforcing the orthodoxy in that particular place unless those groups were present. I would certainly not want to depend on some of our mainline friends for that orthodoxy. But good relationships, though, have come of this particular matter. Thank you for your time. God bless.